Welcome to episode 3 of Where Are You Shopping in Your Relationships? Today, we will be discussing the courage to responsibly own your part in relationships. I'm Mariquita Solis, the Uncaged Heart Coach, and I'm here with Linda Tilson, an accounting professional with a deep understanding of human behavior and the patterns that shape us, that shape how we show up in our lives and relationships. Now, let me just say this is perfectly imperfect, as you can see. I'm stumbling all over the place and I love it. So, today, again, we're going to be having a real conversation about the courage to take responsibility in relationships, not just for what went wrong, but for what went right too. Sometimes we don't think about that. So, true responsibility isn't blaming yourself, it's the willingness to own your full impact, the good and the bad, the ways you showed up, the ways you didn't show up, and the ways you actually showed up very well. So, we live in a world that leans towards blame or avoidance. And so today we're asking a different question. Are you willing to stand in the truth of it all? So, this conversation is about wholeness, not perfection, like I said before. This is authenticity, not it's not perfection, not punishment, but the truth and the courage to live inside it. So let's get into it, Linda. I'm excited that you're here.
I'm excited to be here, and I'm actually very excited about this topic because going through the whole spectrum of what we do right, not just what we do wrong, I think that makes it easier for all of us to step into that, knowing that there is a full range and that it's not, like you said, about the blaming, it's not about punishing anyone. And in anything, and the what I like to think about it is it's like a celebration of sorts too. Is like you're with this person, you choose this person, and choosing how we will show up, and knowing that we can always improve. We can always celebrate what we do have that's working right, because nothing is all good or bad. And so that's why this topic is so timely and important today.
Yeah, it's very important. And often we think not taking responsibility is just like when we run away from things. But I've seen people get awards and people really being honored, and they don't want to take responsibility for that either. They just say, oh, no big deal. But it's a big deal when you get an award and when you're recognized, and how nice that is when we can show that we're honored instead of kind of pushing it away and not taking responsibility for the wonderful things that we did, the accomplishments that we had to get to that, to receive that honor. So,
So
go ahead.
so where do we want to jump in first? Do we want to jump in taking the, when we don't do something right, and then we'll move into the direction of what can happen when we do? Why we do that?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so we've all had that moment where we didn't show up in the way that honored ourselves or another person. So what do we do here? Do we just kind of like dust it off and pretend like it didn't happen and hope it goes away? Or do we step into what happened and say, yes, I did not show up in my best way. I didn't honor how I truly wanted to show up. I definitely didn't honor the other person. And what can we do here? And a lot of times we're so afraid of what the other person's going to say when we bring things up, because sometimes we don't want to bring up something because then it makes the hurt grow even bigger. So you got this small little pain here, and all of a sudden it's become this bigger thing. That's what our mind is telling us. It's trying to fill the gap of how do we fix this. And I have worked with a lot of people, a lot of individuals that have not shown up in the way that they wanted, and they have hurt someone. And I said, well, what's the harm in admitting to that other person that you didn't show up in the way that you wanted, and give a real sincere apology, and do that instead? I said, most people, when you hurt somebody, they just want you to see that you had an effect on them, and that you actually did care that something happened, because not every time when you hurt someone do you intend it. A lot of times you don't intend it and it happens. But once you know, then have a conversation with that person. And then I like to add one more to it. So it's not enough just to apologize and say, I see you, I didn't show up right, I'm going to do better next time. No, it might even be something like this, is asking that other person, I know that I hurt you when I did said thing, or maybe I didn't do said thing. And can you help me? Can you help me when I might be going down that path where I'm really trying my best to show up differently and I might not always do it right? Can you help me, uh, rather than not saying anything or shutting down? Can you just tell me? And when you do that with another person, things shift much differently when you acknowledge your responsibility in what happened, intentional or not. Acknowledge the other person's feelings, because how they feel is how they feel, and it's valid. And so validating how someone feels, and then doing better by asking for help about when you're going down that path and making that effort. Can they support you? So what you've done is you've turned the conversation into a we. How can we fix this? How can we show it together? And when you can do that and talk about it, you start with the small things. Even when it's something big, it gets much easier and better each iteration that you do it. So I just really wanted to share that, because when you haven't done it too many times and you're going out there and maybe it hasn't ended well when you've done this before, like the person started not listening, getting angry back at you, and it blows up and makes it even worse. Hey, I've been there where you fight to win or to have the last word. And so this other way is much kinder and nicer. And it's a practice. When you get to do it, it becomes more natural. You don't even have to think about what it is that you're doing. And people know that when you change, because you know about something that you've done and you change, then here's the other part. Because we talked about this, recognizing the person when they do well. So when that person changes and they do it in a good way that moves to the direction that you want, shower the compliments, the thank yous, all of those gems, because then you know what happens with the behavior. You want to be in that place again where you're making the other person happy and safe and appreciated.
Yeah, I love what you're saying here because you're speaking as a team, right? You're not talking about defensiveness and this kind of blaming thing and when you're taking responsibility. And I think it's very important if you're in relationships for us to own our part in the responsibility right away. There is a part, whether it's I wasn't aware. I want to own that I wasn't aware that I was hurting you, and that's unacceptable for me to hurt you. But to own that part, there's always something we can bring to the table. And to do that with kindness and compassion for everyone involved, is that's when things shift, right? When we're able to take responsibility and put defensiveness or put blame on the side. And like you said, we're coming together as a unit, and we're not coming together to fight it to the death and to say, you're responsible for this. And when we start doing that, then we might as well just throw in the towel, because everyone's going to be fighting. And then we're flooded with cortisol and stress, and we can't think straight, and we attack and say things that we don't mean. And then we have to take responsibility for that on top of the other. So,
Yes, and one of the other things too is, and when we're accepting that we misstepped and we want to do something differently, we don't want to go too far down in the weeds where we're self-blaming and being victim. Oh my God, how could I be so stupid? I did this, I did that. I'm a trashed person, and I just, I can't show up correctly, and people do that too. They get into their head and they start doing that to themselves. You don't want to do that either, because I don't think, again, punishing yourself when you misstep is a healthy way to go about it. It's that acceptance that you have, and being kind to yourself.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, like, I don't want to take responsibility for everything. Oh, it was all my fault. I mean, that's not being, if it needs to be said, a lot of times it'd be easier for me to just say, oh, it's all my fault, instead of having an honest conversation about how did this happen together? How was this experience co-created between us? Because when we have to have courage to speak the truth, and sometimes it is easier just to say, oh, I'm all to blame, it's okay, and then just wipe it, just pretend, and then that pretending, and it comes back again, right? If we're not taking responsibility and being honest about everyone's role in it, then it's coming back. These things don't just go away forever until they are directly looked at, resolved with compassion and empathy and responsibility and I can't think of the maturity.
Yeah, and so then you move away from the self blame. There's the opposite of that, which is not taking any. Oh, it's all their fault. They're sensitive.
Oh,
They always interrupt me when I'm doing something, and how dare they not know that I'm doing something? They always interrupt and do that. You know, you could do that as well, and so really sitting down and having a conversation when things don't go so well, when you're not in the moment, definitely works wonders. It definitely makes a huge difference picking your timing of when to have these conversations.
right. Minimizing. Exactly right. Oh, yeah. It's not that big a deal. Well, you shouldn't be upset over that. Right. I was listening to a TED talk on that. A man who who bumped into another guy's car, and he was saying, well, he shouldn't have been upset, it was just a tiny scratch, he shouldn't have done this, and then he had a lot of self-awareness, and who am I to say that he shouldn't have been that, right? And he took full responsibility of his his thinking about speaking for that person, and how lovely it was to see the journey of self-awareness and ethical moral framework involved in this, because it is about morality and how we can show up as compassionate beings in relationships. No one's perfect, and no one is, we all are going to have to take responsibility. So once we understand that, the more we can practice it by applying it in our lives, the easier it gets every time. And if we go into a relationship knowing that we are two imperfect people, and if we can say, look, I'm going to do my best to take responsibility, and how does that stand, or how are we going to, how is this going to play out in our relationship, or how has this played out in relationships in the past with you, we can just have that conversation and gain awareness on the other person. And yes, I have dated people that have specifically said things like that responsibility must be taken no matter what the condition. So, I mean, that's a wonderful thing to hear from someone you're dating, right? That it doesn't matter what it is, that there's no excuse, but it has to be taken. We all make mistakes. How do we get there, though?
And so I really liked what you said, Marakita, about how it is co-creation. So we co-create the realities that we live in. And so if things aren't going so well, that's when both people take the inventory, which we've talked about, and step up, have the conversation, do better. So we've talked a lot about what to do when we have the missteps. So we also wanted to talk about the things that we create that make the relationship wonderful, and why we got together in the first place, and spending more time about the celebration behind that. But there's this other thing that can happen. Sometimes when somebody gives us a compliment, we're not always quick to accept it. We deflect it, if not reject it altogether sometimes. And so in our relationships, practicing accepting compliments and gratitude and appreciation. You know, I was given this one story before. So it's like if a person were to give a gift and you think about how happy they are, whether it's a compliment, a physical gift, or otherwise, you know, then that gives them joy. And so when we don't accept compliments, we don't accept gratitude and appreciation, then we're not allowing the other person to have that joy. And so being joyous in our relationships and accepting and being receiving also has it does a lot for a relationship. And so practicing that and one could say that women are probably will accept compliments easier, but not necessarily. um, it's not necessarily something that can happen, because you and I both talked about people giving us compliments and we're like, okay, whatever. but really, we whether you're a man or a woman, accepting compliments. And when it does happen, it is a beautiful thing when somebody actually takes something in and accepts the compliment and they that you give them. In a couple of situations, I've had people say, well, that you're giving me a compliment, I should really accept that. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, you really should, because it's heartfelt and genuine, and I mean this. And so, yes, by all means, take this in.
Yeah, I love that, because a lot of times we don't want to accept it, or we'll deflect, or we'll say, someone will say whatever they say, and we'll say, oh no, we'll think they just say that to everybody, but it takes the joy out of it. You're right. And it's wonderful also when we have a partner and we make sure that we have time to celebrate and take responsibilities for the joys in our relationship, because we can go through the day life, just the mundane life, and never appreciate our partners or take responsibility for, like, wow, we don't have to wait a whole year, 2 years, 3 years to celebrate. We can celebrate after a week and say, thanks for being the partner with me to keep this relationship going, this journey going, for being there for me and taking responsibility for the partnership that we have created together. If it's 1 week, 2 weeks, a year, we don't have to wait for these milestones. It's beautiful when we can recognize it and step into that responsibility of co-creating a relationship that's working with maturity and compassion.
And you're right. It's about the small moments. It doesn't have to be something big. Don't wait. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for the special day. Do it every day. Someone does something small for you, say it. I love that how you made me breakfast this morning. That helped me so I could, get ready and start my day. And it was so much nicer. Thank you for doing that. It's as little as that. And we some people might be thrown by the word, why are we using the word responsibility in this conversation about celebrating the good? Well, responsibility means making a choice in how you want to show up. And so that's why the responsibility word is there, because in order for it to happen, we have to make that choice to begin with before any of this can happen. So that's why the word responsibility fits into this conversation.
Right. And we have to take responsibility for not taking out our frustrations, our bad moods on other people. We have to get up and say, am I in a bad mood today? I didn't sleep good, and now I'm going to lash out at my partner, or am I going to take responsibility of my own behavior to be the partner that I want to be, that will fulfill this relationship and bring it to an expansive level. And that takes a lot of awareness. We don't want to just again go on autopilot where we're not taking responsibility for our choices. What I'm choosing to do is going to affect my partner. Now I have to think, there has to be a pause, there has to be some reflection, or we're not going to be able to take responsibility. We can't just be going, and then, like, oh no, I just ran over my partner, now I guess I better take responsibility.
That's right. Being conscious and aware all of the time about how we're moving through our relationship. And I guess another thing that comes to mind as we're talking about this is, because you mentioned it, like Groundhog Day, going through the motions. So if there's something in your relationship that you don't particularly care for, or there's something in your relationship that you want to create more of, either way, work on it. Because the more that you can acknowledge and have these conversations with your partner about where you want to work, imagine that. So you're not going to carry it by yourself, because if we avoid things that aren't going well, or we avoid asking for what we need and want, then then nothing's going to change, because we're the only ones. We're not speaking up. We're not saying anything, and so it requires the courage to speak up and to say something, and to put it in a way that is not putting the other person down either, because we talk about self-aware. So when we tell another person that, hey, why don't you get it when I when I say this? Why aren't you getting it? Why aren't you reading my mind? You should know, all these things, and, and you're having this conversation. Well, you're not going to get anywhere, but you'll be like, wouldn't it be really nice if we could think about what we'd like to do in our future? And one of the things that I want to do is I would like to travel the world. What are some things that you want to do in your future? So there's even positive taking charge and responsibility. So if you want to go travel the world, talk to your partner about how you would like to travel the world.
Right. Yeah. I love what you're saying also. And if you're watching, please let us know you're watching. If you have questions, comments, we'd love to hear them, and please subscribe. So, what I was thinking about is the trap that I've been in many times in the past of blaming. So, allowing myself, just like you were saying, we have to use our voices, right? And so I could be a doormat, and then I'd say, oh my gosh, look how they treated me like a doormat. Well, I didn't take responsibility because I'm the one who created it. I allowed it. I allowed myself to be treated like a doormat because I didn't speak up for myself. Now it's not okay to turn back and throw that on them when I fully gave, like a silent agreement. Oh, it's fine. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to allow it for years or months or whatever. And then, I'm going to blame you.
That's called that slow build up until it blows up. So yes, you want to avoid that from happening. The resentment, that's a real thing. It's real easy to get resentful even on small things and not say anything because you just want to keep the peace. And really, you're not keeping any peace because you're avoiding saying something, and then you're going to have a disaster zone when things do blow up. And when you could have had the courage and taken the opportunity to talk about it when it first started bothering you, because you're right. Silent means agreement. When you don't say something, it must be fine. It must be all right. So that's a good
Right.
point there about how, again, we're responsible for our realities are built by this co-authorship.
Right. And we're not, I think one thing is very important to say is to not to put all this responsibility on other people. For
Mhm.
a lot of times, like I want to have people will say the intention will be I'll have a partner and now they're here to entertain me. They're not responsible for my entertainment. I mean, as much as I'd like to say, okay, start entertaining me, I'm going to get up, and now that's your job. No, it's our job to work together to build, to co-create something amazing. It's not about this one person's job to do everything. And that was what we were talking about also is I mean, there has to be an agreement in the relationship about making plans. I mean, maybe someone is better at that. Maybe you want to balance that out, however it is. But all this comes from communication, because if you don't communicate, then you're throwing the blame and not taking responsibility. Again, it's all tying back to taking responsibility for your own awareness and communicating with your partner.
Yeah, like you said, you share. No one wants to have the job of making sure that they satisfy and fulfill another person, because you got to take care of yourself, and then you're going to take on another person. So no, we should not expect someone to bring us joy and entertainment and all these other things. It should be, what are we contributing to this relationship? What are they contributing? And having the conversation, so that way you have shared meaning in what is most meaningful in this relationship to work on at any given time, because you also can't work on a dozen different things and think it's going to go well either. You pick something small and work towards that, and then, wow, we got an agreement. We now know that we want to travel the world, and we're making some plans, and so we got that done. Okay. And then remembering to ask the other person too. It's like an inventory, so you can ask the question, what do you think's going really well right now, and is making life fun, and worthwhile and meaningful. And then like, okay, where are some areas where we could work to make things better that aren't really working as well as we'd like to. I mean, these are not easy conversations when you first go into them, but if you make them a regular habit and you have them early and often, because it's not like you reach a plateau in your relationship and everything's running smooth sail and that you can just let off the steering of the direction. No, you're always going to be looking at where you are, where you're headed, and adjusting the sails as you need to. And when you can do that, I don't know why I'm talking about ships and sails, but that's where we're
Well, I like what you're saying. I mean,
at.
it's always important to also check into your relationships, take responsibility for them. How are you feeling in the relationship? Is there something I can do to support you more so? Maybe I've missed things, right? And that is taking responsibility of the relationship growing, right? And a lot of times we don't do that. And we're not going to do it unless we plan it. Again, like the celebration, stop, celebrate, stop, have the conversations. And it's easy to go to the movies and do all the things without stopping. I mean, it's fun, but there has to be, in order for it to sustain a relationship, there has to be more than fun, because those bumpy times are coming. So every time we can sit down with our partner and have these conversations of depth, we're preparing ourselves for the bumpy roads that are coming. And our relationship is going to be more grounded when the bumps come.
Oh, definitely. Because you're practicing that muscle of having these conversations. Everyone's getting used to having them because not everyone thinks that sitting down and having these structured conversations is easy. They're like, oh, do we have to do this? You're not my relationship coach. Why are you doing this to me? Don't want to do it. But no, I mean, really, it's all seriousness. Having the conversations when you're calm and collected and getting into that deeper stuff, because if you can't talk about some of the not so deep, the really hard stuff, it's going to get really hard when you haven't had that practice. And all relationships are going to go through the highs and the lows, and learning how to navigate those as you go, knowing that you're not going to be perfect. And you can say that, hey, I need to talk to you about something and I don't think I'm going to say the right words, but I'm going to sure try. My intention here is I want to get more connected to you, and I need to talk about this said thing. And will you sit down with me and do this with me? Because it's really scary right now to have this conversation, but I feel like not having it is even more scary.
Yeah, I love that. And I love, like, again, back to what you said in the beginning was, in working together. And now I don't know how I lost it, but I mean, asking your partner for help is what it was, right? Asking, can you maybe if I'm saying something and I'm offending you, please let me know, because that's not my intention, right? And being very vulnerable. I love what you just said. This conversation is scary for me, but you're worth it, right? This relationship is worth it. So I mean, how beautiful that is when we can really step into that sort of communication that is expansive, and it brings about growth, and really sets that foundation between the two of you all of safety. Because when we take responsibility and we have awareness, we're bringing safety into our relationships. When there's no responsibility, then anybody could be attacked at any time, and that's not safe.
No, we're not going to open up. We're not safe. We're just going to shut down and withhold and hope for the best and experience the worst. And we don't want that. No one wants that. And so you're right. It's all about the communication builds the bridge to safety, really, and being able to do it in a way that it's not always going to be comfortable. It's not going to be easy. There's times it's going to be downright scary. But I shared that, you know what? It's okay to get scared. It's okay to feel uncomfortable, because you don't want what happens when you don't have these conversations. It's way worse, and sometimes you can't salvage something after it's been done. And so don't let it get to that point where you can't continue to work on it. Do it and be preventive.
Exactly, right? And this is all about prevention and about growth with compassion and empathy, and moving forward in relationships and not being perfect, but being vulnerable and courageous. So, yeah, this is wonderful. And I see that we're coming, the time always goes so fast with you, Linda. So, let's get some final thoughts. If anybody has any comments, we welcome them. And also, again, if you have any topics that you'd like us to discuss in relationships, please let us know. Did you have any final thoughts? I mean, I'm sure you have 1,000 final thoughts,
Oh, I
but
always have a thousand final thoughts. You know that. It's just trying to pick the one. I can't pick the one, but I guess I would say that my final thoughts on this whole topic for today is don't let tough and hard and fear get in the way of getting to that place of good, because I don't know too many people that have sat down to have one of these tough conversations and haven't actually reestablished the trust, the safety, and improved the connection, and the relationship just sailed on from there.
I love that. Yes. Honoring yourself here in this safe space. I mean, in the vulnerable. And I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Because this has to happen. These conversations have to happen if your relationship is going to stay together. And the way you talk about just owning it, own it, and taking responsibility. This might be, and I might be afraid, but gosh, how strong and courageous that is. So yes, that is taking responsibility. So thank you so much, Linda, for this wonderful, as always, inspiring conversation. And we'll see what our minds come up with for the next one. I'm excited about it. There's
Me
so much to
too.
talk about.
So we'll see you next week.
Yeah, thanks for watching, y'all. Please comment and let us know what really resonated with you all. And again, we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.